in special partnership with and brought to you by our friends at FLYN. Today on Soulfront, where we explore personal, social, and workforce transformation, we have Trena White. Trena is the co-founder of Page 2 and has been publishing books for over 15 years. At Page 2, Trena offers a different publishing model, a faster path to market, more creative control, and deeper engagement. Page 2 launched in 2013 to help thought leaders, subject matter experts, and organizations publish leading nonfiction books. The Page 2 team carefully vets freelance authors, offering full-service book production, global retail distribution, and sales and marketing support for books in any format. Trena has worked in some of the world's largest, most prestigious publishers, produced thousands of books, publishing international bestsellers, and winning numerous awards along the way. Today, we're going to discuss Page 2's publishing philosophy and culture. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, well, Trena, hey, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just a quick bio of yourself before we start, if that's all right. Trena, you've been in publishing for over 15 years. In 2013, you co-founded and launched Page 2 to help thought leaders, subject matter experts, and organizations publish nonfiction books to offer a different publishing model compared to traditional publishers. You gave a faster path to market, more creative control, deeper engagement. The Page 2 model is entrepreneurial, highly personal, and has a strong back end and direct sales revenue potential for authors. So that's really cool. You've worked with some of the largest and most prestigious publishers, producing thousands of books, published international bestsellers, won numerous awards along the way. And today we're going to discuss Page 2's publishing, your philosophy and the culture. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah. So to start, I'd just like to ask, can you tell us a little bit of the origin story for the name of your business? Why did you end up calling it Page 2?
Yeah, it was a tough decision. It's so hard to name a company. And my co-founder, Jesse Finkelstein, and I enlisted the help of our now creative director, Peter Cocking, to come up with it. And for us, it had multiple meanings and still does. It was referring to the fact that we were trying to create a new kind of publishing company that was embracing innovation and change and looking into the future, which we felt the reference to the second page referred to, almost publishing 2.0 in a way. And we also like the fact that by the time you're on the second page, you're hooked in the story or in the book, and moving forward. So it suggests progress. And then there were two of us. You know, we started as partners, and our partnership is just utterly integral to everything at Page 2. And so it was a reference to that relationship as well.
That's cool. Like I love when a name of a business or a book has multiple meanings and you feel connected to it. So that's so wonderful. You know, when you look at publishing, you used to think of authors, not as many choices. Like you had only a half dozen big publishing companies to choose from, profitability, motivated publishers to be highly selective, like almost like gatekeepers, where they had a job to almost like weed out unwanted authors. A traditional like publishing company might receive like 40,000 unsolicited manuscripts a year, and I think they'd end up publishing, one every 5 years. People said that this kind of experience was extremely frustrating, like just a strange, almost dysfunctional system. So thankfully, like there's this alternative, which is Page 2 and other hybrid publishers like yourself. Can you talk more about like the background that you experienced in traditional publishing, and when did you recognize that, hey, there's a need to change the way things are done?
Yeah, well, so I had worked in traditional publishing for about a decade before launching Page 2 with Jesse. So I really lived and breathed that world. And I still feel there's a lot of great things about it. But what I started to notice was that for true entrepreneurial authors, they often did feel frustrated by their experience of traditional publishing, and often felt like they were having to compromise on certain decisions, like the cover design or the book title or the way it's marketed. Um, and we just recognize that for authors who are running businesses and writing books that relate to their businesses, they really know their audience and they really know how to reach them. And we felt that traditional publishing wasn't quite tapping into that and making the most of their own understanding of the market. So we had early conversations with a couple of author contacts of ours specifically that were really foundational to our thinking about what our model might become.
Yeah, and prior to founding Page Two, you had that experience where you worked for a publishing company and it went through this bankruptcy. And you said, when you're going through that experience, it helped you kind of think more deeply about launching your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what did it feel like, and how did you kind of pick up the pieces?
Yeah, that was such a tumultuous time because my co-founder and I had, about 6 months before the bankruptcy period, we had been promoted into senior leadership positions at that company. I was made publisher and she was made chief operating officer. And then 6 months later, the bank called its loan on a very sizable debt that the company held. And that sent us into this process of basically trying to sell off the company that we were meant to be leading. We were meant to be the succession plan. Um, and everything went sideways very quickly. And so what happened was during that process, we started to do a lot of modeling, business modeling for potential buyers and investors. And so we would, someone would come around kind of looking at the books, and we would start modeling what the team might look like if we were to come through it, and how many books we would publish a year, what the list would look like. And so it gave us a sense of what it might be like for the two of us to collaborate on our own vision and to see it through. And I think it really whet our appetites for the opportunity to do that. So eventually that company dissolved, and my co-founder and I were both unemployed along with everybody else who used to work there. And that basically opened up this opportunity for us to start something fresh, because it was either, let's go find jobs somewhere, or let's do our own thing. And we chose to take the entrepreneurial path at that moment.
Yeah, so what was can you tell that story of you and Jesse starting up the business?
Yeah. Well, so we started, the spark was there when we were working together through that bankruptcy. I remember us looking at each other one day in the boardroom as we were doing some of this modeling and just saying, we really need to do something together. But I was also about to have my first baby. And so we were all laid off. I went and had my baby. And within a couple of months, Jesse and I started to meet together in my living room with my baby, my newborn, and start to plan our vision for this new company. So it was somewhat gradual because I was balancing new motherhood with our planning. But we basically committed to each other fairly quickly that we were going to do this, and we were going to do it seriously, and we were going to try to build a business, not just become freelancers or try to find other jobs. We were going to try and build something substantial together. So we started to meet with people both from book publishing and from other industries like marketing and branding and various, other entrepreneurs, to tell them about what we were thinking and to get their input on our idea and our vision. And those conversations really shaped what we ended up becoming.
Yeah. And when you were putting together that vision, did you find that, you almost it came to you from all the kind of business planning that you had beforehand and then kind of sitting down together, or was it something that you were continually testing?
It was both. It was something we were definitely continually testing through these conversations with other people. And we did quite a lot of research into the market at the time, because what was happening was what I would describe as the Wild West of self-publishing. So there was traditional publishing, and then all of these self-publishing options had relatively recently opened up. And we just very quickly identified that there was a gap in the middle where those two could meet, where somebody could publish a book in their own way and be entrepreneurial about it as they would with self-publishing, but with the professionalism of traditional publishing. And that was what we wanted to do, is to try to bring those two worlds together. So not throw out the best of traditional publishing, but try to bring it to people who would thrive in a more independent model.
Yeah, and as you're building, the publishing company, you also said that you needed to create those clear boundaries between family and business in a way to reduce guilt and anxiety. And you try to turn off work so you could give attention at home. Like, with the growth of your business, how have you been able to strike the balance between putting authors first, but also creating time for family and loved ones?
Yeah, I love that question because I think it's so important. I would say it's something that I still find a challenge. It's still a struggle to create those boundaries. Our business has grown significantly over the last few years, and there's always more to do. But I'm conscious too that my sons they're 5 and 7. They're so little, and I don't want these years to suddenly pass before with me absorbed in work. So I think for me, I try to shut down when it's time to pick them up at 5 o'clock. I shut down and I try not to work again until they're in bed. I really try to create that separation. On weekends, when I'm with them, I'm mostly not working. I try, every now and then there's the odd phone call you do from the playground or whatever, but I'm trying not to do that, because I find that my own sense of well-being is I feel much healthier and much more focused and present if I'm just doing one thing at a time. And it does get a bit stressful when they bleed together.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear that. At least you're making the attempt,
Yeah.
because it's so tough when you get that busy. And I think more people need to hear that message.
Yeah, and I think it's been a real struggle for a lot of people, as we've spoken about before, Scott, with COVID, right? It's been impossible to have those boundaries for many people this year, because we are working with kids running in through the background. So for me, this year's been a reminder of how hard multitasking is, and how much smarter and more strategic I can be if I'm just focusing on one thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of kind of the pandemic and its effects, like Page Two recently put out a blog entitled "We Remember Why We Got Into This Crazy Business in the First Place," and you talk about your realization of your real love for the authors and how forcefully it rang true during the pandemic. A large part of your culture stems from that relationship that you have with authors. Is there a Page Two story about authors that really stands out to you?
Oh my goodness, so many. I mean, our mandate and our whole reason for being is to partner with authors in a meaningful way and to put them at the center of the process. So it's so hard to come up with one story. We right away, one of the authors who comes to mind for me is a keynote speaker and international sales trainer named Phil Jones. And we published a book by him called Exactly What to Say a few years ago. That's now sold almost 750,000 copies around the world. And we've done many, many projects with him. So for instance, he's had a lot of clients who wanted customized editions of his book that we've then created for him. There's, a Volkswagen edition of his book that nobody else has ever seen except his clients and, and us. So I think of that just because we're trying to help him achieve his goals for his business and find creative and interesting ways to build the book into the work that he's doing.
Yeah, like during the pandemic, you're also keeping busy with new initiatives. Like you laid groundwork for a new publishing program, began building custom audio book services, launched an ebook bulk sales offering, and also you're hiring new staff. Like the pandemic for a lot of people has been this time to reframe, adapt, rethink strategy. How has the pandemic changed Page Two's plans for the future?
It's interesting because even a lot of the new initiatives that we have launched over the last couple of months are things that we had been planning heading into COVID. But the pandemic expedited some of them. So for instance, now book selling is heavily digital. So people are buying more ebooks. Ebooks are seeing, double-digit growth. Audiobooks are seeing massive growth. And on top of that, people are more likely to buy their books online now than they were pre-COVID. So if anything, it's just pushed up our need to create new programs that address the rapid increase in interest in all things digital. So that's why, for instance, we found a solution for how to sell bulk sales of ebooks, because suddenly overnight, all of our authors who were doing in-person events were doing virtual events, and we wanted to find a way to easily get the ebook to large groups of people that might be attending their webinars. So I think we would have launched that service eventually, but it basically created a more immediate need for it that we acted on.
Yeah, it's so interesting with technology now, just how much you can push the envelope. I think ebooks make up, well, they did, like when I read online, they make up about 18% of book purchases. And I don't know if that's increased kind of since the pandemic. Like you've said, it's doubled. Has technology enabled Page Two to like break free from traditional publishing in other ways as well?
Definitely. Just as an example, one of the things we do that's very unusual is we sell and distribute books either through the full book trade, so into brick and mortar stores and libraries, as well as online. And sometimes we also sell books exclusively through print on demand. So that is, we use digital printing and distribution platforms that were created to service self-publishers several years ago. And we've been using them for our authors to make their books available internationally. And it's quite unusual for a publisher to kind of have this fork in their path to selling and distributing their book in the way that we do. But it's that we really see that there are, there isn't just a one size fits all publishing path. We really want to think about what is the best strategy for this particular author and how are we going to reach their audience best. And so in some cases that means using print on demand technology.
Like when you look kind of from the outside in, marketing a book looks hard. Like you have social media, authors can use to directly access like their audiences who are already invested in them. Authors are like also becoming more comfortable, like you mentioned with that other gentleman, where he's comfortable getting in front of crowds, doing keynotes, workshops, consulting. Like, what advice do you give authors when they're looking to achieve a wider readership?
Well, I think the biggest thing I would say is it's never too early to start marketing, to start building your audience. So we firmly believe that the worst thing somebody could do to market their book is to not really think about it until just before the book launches. If you think one day you may end up writing a book, then now is the time to start thinking about building your audience. And that might mean well, podcasting. It might mean creating a really robust and useful LinkedIn profile. It might mean developing a blog and an email list. It might mean, getting out and doing more training or consulting or speaking. There are so many different ways that an author can build their audience and profile. And the sooner you do that work, the more likely you'll have an active audience that is really eager to hear that message from you by the time the book launches.
Yeah, it's interesting because it just seems like it's there's so many different ways to go about it. You almost need somebody to kind of guide you with that, because you're going to have different strengths depending on who.
Yes. That's right. And that's such a critical point, Scott, because we would never advise somebody to just get out and do everything you possibly can. You really have to figure out what's going to be interesting to you and sustainable for you over the long term. And if you're somebody who really despises using social media, then that's fine. You don't need to. You'll just want to find some other things that are going to be helpful in order to build your audience and really play to your strengths.
Yeah, your business partner Jessie, she said what separates Page Two as a publisher comes down to the authors retaining their rights, holding creative control, earning more on the back end versus traditional publishing models, having a solutions focused approach. So those are some core components. But now that you're with us, can you tell us more about what separates Page Two in your mind as a publisher?
Yeah, I would say it's all of those things, and it's our team. So we have a team of 16 people who are very, very serious book publishing professionals. Our creative director, for instance, just last week won 2 design awards for 2 of our books. Our editorial director this year won an award for editorial excellence. So it's a team that is very talented and kind of top tier talent. And that is a big part of what makes us different. There are, you're getting kind of the caliber of team that you would get if you were to work with a major Big 5 traditional publisher. And we're also, it's the partnership that we have with our authors, where we really are here to act in service of our authors and their vision, as well as to serve the reader and what they will want from the book.
Yeah.
So it's.
I was just going to say, from the other side of things, if you're going to think kind of from the author's perspective, what should they consider when they're approaching a publisher?
Yeah, I would say you want to be very clear about what you have to say that's unique and different, and why you're the person to write that book. When we look at a book that we will publish, we're always looking at how it would fit in the market. So, what other books are out there on your topic, and what makes yours different and unique and original? How are you filling a gap that's in the market? I think for the kind of nonfiction that we publish, that's a very critical part of the process. So you want to get clear on that, and what is your unique value proposition really with the book.
Mm-hmm. Now, the publishing industry is not going to stop changing. It seems like it just continues to change more and more. Like if you look at self-published books, like there's been over 100% increase in drama books and poetry. I think there's an 80% increase in biographies, general fiction, 30% in science books. So there's been this, like we've talked about, empowerment of the author, an ability for them to maintain control and new ways to find their readers. Where do you see Page Two in its evolution as a publishing company?
Mm-hmm. Really, we're in a really exciting place right now because we've just hired 3 new people, and we now have the team in place that Jesse and I had imagined 7 years ago. We had always thought about having a team of maybe a dozen to 16 people, and we had thought through what those roles might be, and we now have them. And so for us, we want to mostly from now on go a bit deeper into our service offering. So we want to find new and creative ways to support our authors with their marketing, for instance. We want to get more creative with, audiobook production. We want to do what we're doing, but even bigger and better and bolder, let's say.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're going to take like a leap and think into kind of the more distant future, do you have a vision for what that might look like?
Yeah, what we plan to do, we've never wanted it to be the Jesse and Trena show. For us, it's always been about developing a team of professionals. And so when Jesse and I think long-term, it's really about ensuring that we have the right people in place to provide long-term leadership beyond the work that she and I might be doing. So it's really about empowering our team in a very significant way to lead the company.
So Trena, I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been a ton of fun. Just to end, I'd just like to ask, is there a key message that you would give to organizational leaders right now who are trying to build their organization and their brand in their company?
Mm-hmm. I would say look for allies and partners who can help you along the way. That when you find the right support and partners and team members, everything becomes so much easier. So for me, that's been the essence of Page Two. It's been about relationship building and partnership. And without my business partner, I can't even imagine what this year would have been like. So for people who don't have that person built in, I think this is a time to try to find those relationships that can provide that kind of support.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Trena, so much for your time today.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for your support. Please remember to click subscribe so we can bring you more remarkable interviews with extraordinary leaders.